Welcome to the Life After Cancer podcast, made possible by the National Lottery Community Fund. I'm Steph, founder of Life After Cancer. I've been through cancer myself, and I know that when treatment ends, life doesn't always return to normal. Here we talk about the emotional, practical, and often invisible parts of life after treatment through lived experience and professional insight. These conversations share real experiences and perspectives. They're not medical advice and can't replace support from your healthcare team. If you're navigating life after cancer, supporting someone you care about, or working in cancer care, you're in the right place. Let's begin. Welcome to today's episode. Today we're talking about post-traumatic growth. And to help us explore this, I'm joined by Professor Nazanin Derakhshan and Gill McGuire, who shares her lived experience of life after cancer. Naz is a professor of experimental psychopathology, founder of the award-winning BRIC Centre, and director of the Growth and Resilience in Trauma Centre at the National Centre for Integrative Oncology. Her work focuses on anxiety, depression, and resilience. And Naz describes post-traumatic growth as the changes that come about after a traumatic event like a cancer diagnosis. And she explains that growth can occur alongside the difficulties, and that while there's no single formula or timeline, there are ways we can begin to encourage it. Gill was diagnosed with rectal cancer in 2020 at the age of 40, and her diagnosis turned her world upside down. And like many people, she expected that once treatment finished, life might begin to return to normal. But instead, something shifted. Gill realised that the life she had before cancer no longer quite fit. And at one point, she found herself sitting in a meeting thinking, I actually just don't care enough to be sat in this meeting. And that moment became the beginning of some big changes about work, priorities, and how she wanted to live her life. In this episode, we explore what post-traumatic growth can look like after cancer, why growth and struggle often exist at the same time, and why there's no single timeline for how life unfolds afterwards. Here's our conversation. Wonderful. Welcome both. Gill, let's start with you, if that's okay. So Gill, I'd love you to tell us a little bit about your cancer experience and where you are now with life.
Okay, so I was diagnosed back in January 2020. With stage 3 rectal cancer. And so I had my treatment. So I had chemo and then I had radiotherapy. I'm sure 2020 rings bells in everyone's heads because that was the year that was COVID then kind of hit at the same time. So my treatment was changed a bit. But then ultimately had major surgery in July of 2020, then more surgery in the October. And then I was very lucky to be all clear at that point and have been ever since. I feel like I need to touch wood at that point. So I'm now 5.5 years, just a bit more all clear. In terms of where life is, I guess I've been back working for quite a long time, different job to what I was doing. Yeah, trying to live life but life does look a bit different. So I definitely see it as there's the before cancer diagnosis and there's the after cancer diagnosis for sure.
Thank you, Gill. And Naz, we're here today to talk about post-traumatic growth. Could you tell us a little bit about your work in regards to that?
I work on cognitive resilience and its relationship with emotional health and mental well-being. So the work includes working with people who've experienced trauma-related events. And post-traumatic growth has been relatively kind of new within the cancer literature, and it relates to positive changes post-cancer diagnosis. And I have worked with populations, including cancer survivors and cancer patients who have experienced post-traumatic stress-related symptomatologies and post-traumatic growth.
Could you tell us what post-traumatic growth is, especially in the cancer context?
Post-traumatic growth refers to the changes that come about after a traumatic event like a life-threatening disease, like a cancer diagnosis, for example. So you grow positively from the trauma that you have endured. And this can include things like meaning finding, reprioritization of life's goals, and rethinking the impact of trauma in terms of opportunities to grow fruitfully from the negative experiences associated with trauma. So the definition isn't fixed, to be honest, and it can, encompass any significant constructive shift in, your behaviour, your thoughts, your experiences, your life choices.
Gill, when you hear that, does any of that sound familiar?
Yeah, it does, definitely. I think it's quite hard sometimes to look at the whole experience as being a positive experience, but there's definitely, I guess, with the benefit of being, 5+ years down the road, I can kind of look back and go, actually, you use the word opportunity, and I think actually it did give me an opportunity to ultimately change my job, which has meant my priorities now feel better aligned. I've got 3 young daughters, and my job before was, I don't know, it always seemed to I allowed it to take priority, and I wasn't there to pick up my children from school, all things that I wanted to be able to do, and now I can. So my work-life balance is now much better as a consequence. I think I'm also much better at following my gut instinct about whether I do something or not. So in terms of what job I am doing, and ultimately where I'm aiming to do, I'm currently retraining as a counsellor, because that's something I really want to do, and I don't think I would ever have done that before had I not had this kind of wake up call. It sounds really cliche, doesn't it? It's that whole life's too short to carry on doing stuff that you're not really enjoying, and there's nothing like facing your own mortality to kind of focus on that, I think.
Naz, how common is post-traumatic growth after cancer?
The way post-traumatic growth is measured, maybe using self-report questionnaires, and very few studies have used in-depth interviews to understand how growth has occurred. You mentioned cancer, after cancer. We're still understanding the nature and trajectory of post-traumatic growth, post-cancer diagnosis and treatment. But so far, the literature shows that at least 50% of individuals with cancer diagnosis have experienced some kind of post-traumatic growth.
And what does that post-traumatic growth look like in everyday life for someone? So one of those 50%.
It can be as simple as, you mentioned something about prioritising, maybe picking up your children over staying at work, or a slight change that you have made to benefit your well-being that you would have not done otherwise prior to your diagnosis. So it could be small things like including time for yourself, self-compassionate activities, or to much bigger things like changing your job or seeking new relationship, going for like a world-round journey, things that you've perhaps wanted to do in the past but have never really, incorporated, haven't had the will and power to kind of do it, So small and big changes.
Mm. And Gill, work was quite a big change for you, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about that and when you realised, actually, this needs to change for me.
Yeah, so I'm a patent attorney, so a lawyer. I was working as a partner in a law firm at the time that I was diagnosed. I was working 4 days a week, but it's one of those jobs where 4 days a week is a bit of a myth, I think. Officially 4 days, but actually full time. And my youngest daughter at that point, she was 1.5, just coming up to 2. I think I'd managed to kind of balance it whilst I had 2 children, but having the third child just kind of tipped the balance. So I already knew, I think, before that it wasn't ideal, but I couldn't see a way out. And then obviously had the diagnosis. I was off for a year, then went back for a year. And it was in that year that I really noticed the difference, because I think there's a kind of perspective, I think, that comes with having been through that of, I just remember sitting in a meeting thinking about some sort of politics that was going on with the firm, thinking, actually, I actually just don't care. I don't care enough to be sat in this meeting. And that was the start of actually, no, I really need to do something about this. I also had the long-term effects from the cancer treatment, as well as actually, can I do this job anymore? I don't have the same energy that I used to have, and it involved quite a lot of travel, and physically that was going to be a challenge. Being stuck in a hearing room for hours, not knowing whether I could get out, and one of the long-term effects from my treatment is I had bowel cancer, so I need to know that I can go to a bathroom if I need to go to a bathroom. And all of that kind of added up together. So there's kind of one angle of it was like, actually, I can't do this job anymore. But then I guess the way to kind of reframe it and flip it is, actually, I've got an opportunity not to do this job anymore. Do I want to do something else now? And actually, now it's even more important to me that I spend time with the family. And actually, this is my opportunity to change things. So it's kind of double-edged, two sides to it, really. There's a kind of, actually, physically, if I probably stopped and sat down, I'd have to admit to myself, I'm not sure this is doable. I probably could have pushed myself, actually, but to what end? That's another thing that's changed. Like, previously, I would have worked myself to the bone, but now I'm very aware that I can't do that anymore, and it's not a good thing to be doing. So it was, this sort of realisation that, I can't do it. And actually, I'm not sure I want to anymore. And I've got this opportunity that I wouldn't have otherwise had, albeit in horrible circumstances, to change things, which is what I ended up doing.
That's really interesting, isn't it? I think you said, I can't do it. And then you said, I don't want to.
Yeah, it was that moment. Like, I can really remember it really vividly, sitting in that meeting, like, what am I doing? Like, I genuinely don't care, which is an awful thing to say, isn't it? But I just genuinely don't care what letterhead we have on the paper, what colour the font is. It's sort of trivial stuff. I think that if you take a step back, it feels trivial compared to everything that you've been through. And it was having discussions like that weren't a justification enough not to be seeing my family. I think it was that kind of light bulb moment.
And that's quite a big change. Were there smaller changes in your life that you noticed alongside that?
Yeah, I guess just generally how I felt about things, trying not to sweat the small stuff as well. It's that kind of perspective of, I'm getting really stressed about this, but actually, does it warrant getting really stressed about? I've become better at doing that. And again, possibly a bit cliched, it's kind of appreciating the smaller things in life as well. Just actually, I didn't know if I was going to have this, but I have got it, and I'm incredibly grateful for. I think you just see things through different eyes. Just go for a walk, walking the dog. Actually, it's not, for some people, maybe that's a hassle, and for me, it probably was an extra thing to try and fit in. But actually, really enjoy it. I love hearing the birds sing. Little things like that suddenly become much more important, I think.
And were those things you noticed in the moment? Or were they things you reflected on later on and you look back and thought, oh, actually, those things are really important to me now?
Take going for a walk as an example. I just remember taking a really deep breath, just like, okay, I'm really enjoying this actually in the moment. So in the moment, actually, I'm really glad I'm doing this. And I feel a massive release actually for being here and noticing the birds singing and the sun shining, and I'm out in the countryside and no one needs anything from me right now. So yeah, just appreciating that, I think. And I guess then you reflect back and realise that your perspective has changed. So I guess I noticed it in the moment, but not as a overall thing until you kind of reflect and look back.
Naz, are they signs of post-traumatic growth?
They are beautiful signs of post-traumatic growth, like noticing the birds sing and enjoying the walk with the dog, to bigger changes like challenging your views on your work, and then reframing and gratitude, actually being grateful for the small things has had huge impact on the perspectives that you've developed. And sometimes we may not notice these small changes, but when we reflect on them, like you have now, they sound amazing, even kind of small things that no one actually needs me right now. I can do what I wish to do and I'm feeling good about it. I think there's a fine line between feeling sorrow for I'm not able to do that anymore, but actually I don't want to be doing that now. And this is giving me more pleasure now. So it's a newfound respect for life, and everything that goes with it. And I have more control. I'm making the decisions now. And so the sense of control is a positive shift here that feeds into growth post-traumatic experiences. So, and cancer takes away control. So to be able to insert that level of control, and it's courageous, it's hard, by the way. It's a lot of the time we think about, I'm going to make this change and I'm going to make that change. But actually, these are not very easy to implement at times. It takes courage, it takes bravery, and the perspective. So, yeah, amazing examples of post-traumatic growth.
And Gill spoke through some challenges,
yes,
some difficulties. Can we grow and experience those difficulties at the same time?
This is a fantastic question, and it hits the nail on the head. So I'm going with what the literature has shown in terms of the research. So sometimes researchers have found positive relationship. So you get people are reporting levels of traumatic experiences, but at the same time they're reporting growth. Sometimes you get negative relationship. So as one goes up, the other goes down, and sometimes no relationship at all. So it's very interesting to understand the moderators of this relationship. What can explain and what can reduce the link between the two. Individuals who report both are known to be more resilient. So it's the validation, the acknowledgement of the traumatic related experience, not kind of, okay, they're shelving it, that didn't exist, I'm so over that now. No. But at the same time, implementing changes alongside alongside navigating your life through those challenges. Yes, so they can coexist. You will see better well-being levels reported by individuals who have both trauma and post-traumatic growth within their lives.
Thank you, Naz. Gill, are there areas of your life that have not changed at all?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm sure there are. I don't want to give the impression of having this completely different life to how it was before. I guess in terms of being a parent, that feels, still as challenging as it was. Still get annoyed with the kids. I think sort of day to day, I'm doing a different job, but I'm still working. I still, I'm still struggle with the priorities and stuff. So yeah, I don't feel like I've got a completely different life at all. There are just some, I guess, quite big changes in terms of the work side of things, but on a day-to-day basis, other than the job change, it feels quite similar to how it was. Picking up on what you were saying, there's still the fear that's there that, lots of, I think almost all cancer survivors have. Is it going to come back? Still, thinking back over the whole experience, I don't feel like I've completely put that behind me at all. I definitely go down the route of, oh God, I can't do this anymore. I can't do it. And having to kind of catch myself and go, okay, no, this is what you can do, and I try and find a positive way of doing that. I think I've just had this fierce determination that it's already taken so much. I'm not prepared for it to take everything else as well. So, and on a good day, that's fine. On a not so good day, when I'm tired and a bit overwhelmed by it, that's harder.
I think that's really helpful to hear, isn't it? A picture of the whole landscape and not just, oh, yeah, I had cancer and I finished cancer treatment and I changed this one huge piece of my life and now I live happily ever after, because it's not the reality, is it, for most people? And that part of our life won't change, and that's okay too. And there are days when things are very, very hard, and there are days when I can breeze through it, and I've kept to those habits and I've said what I want to say. You know, I think because we hear it often, don't we, in the cancer community, that on the outside, especially with social media, life can look quite perfect, whether you've had cancer treatment or not. But it's quite a dangerous perception to be kind of pushing forward. So
for sure. I would hate for people to think that life is perfect. It's a very long way from perfect, I guess. And there's always going to be, for me, the shadow in the background of how I've kind of got to where I am. I guess I've just tried to make the best of a really rubbish situation. They were really tough days, and I think it's hard because there's like this societal expectation as well of people bouncing back straight after the treatment as well, isn't they? Oh, you're alive, off you go back to work. Work's not set up for you to return to. I still couldn't quite pin it down. I'm probably closer to who I am.
Naz, what's your response to that?
I completely agree with you, and expectations run high after active treatment. And the notion of bouncing back, I think, is a bit convoluted. So we are changed after diagnosis and active treatment. Cancer does change people for the better, and there are still challenging aspects of your life, possibly more challenging than before. But the concept is that we take our cancer forward with us. So cancer diagnosis and treatment, side effects, challenges that it brings with it in survivorship are not something that can be boxed or put on the shelf or forgotten, or us bouncing back to how we were. The changes are there to stay. However, what we do with those changes, the way we process those changes, has a huge effect on how we grow positively from those changes. And I'm so glad that you acknowledge the difficulties. The fear of cancer recurrence, the fear of metastatic disease is very real. It's there in the background, and waiting to raise its ugly head especially when we're alone and there's no one else around. But that doesn't necessarily mean that growth can't occur alongside. As we have seen with the information that you've just relayed, there have been areas of growth and acknowledgement of the difficulties that we possibly can't change.
So when does post-traumatic growth show up, if at all?
This is, again, an amazing question. Within the cancer literature, the research has showed that we need time for consolidation, for seizing these opportunities, for reflection. In terms of our prefrontal function, I keep going back to the brain, making sense of requires time. It's not something that springs on us. Mm-hmm. And the trauma that individuals endure can have long-lasting effects. So through time, with various behaviours we engage in, psychoeducation can help us maybe notice these small changes, gratitude, appreciation for life and so forth. And so an elapsed time, I can't say for everyone it's 2 years or 1 year or 6 years or 5 years. We're all different. But some of our recent research that we've published shows that perceived cognitive functioning, cognitive flexibility, mediates the relationship between traumatic experience and traumatic growth. So if you noticed when you were speaking earlier, you kind of switched between upsetting or challenging emotional experiences that you have and positive ones. Okay, so the appreciation of both, to be able to switch and be able to move between these emotional experiences is an indication of cognitive flexibility. And this can help transition from trauma to growth much easier. Again, not everyone is at the same, place to exercise cognitive flexibility towards growth, but it can be achieved. Cancer impairs neuroplasticity, but there are ways that we can improve neuroplasticity and promote growth from cognitive flexibility.
Okay, and we're going to come back to the how. Before we do that, Gill, can you relate to what Naz is saying?
Yeah, the time. I think I put myself under pressure, actually, that I needed to make something meaningful come out of such an awful situation. It's like, okay, right, I need to completely look at my life. I need to change everything that needs changing, and I need to do it now. I don't think I was ready to do it at all. It was just felt this pressure coming from me, I think, or maybe just generally it's a societal thing, isn't it, as well? It's like, okay, this has been an awful experience. Now I need to make something positive come from this. Now I'm going to sit down and I'm going to think what job I want to do. I don't want to do this one, so what do I want to do? And I'm going to sit down, I'm going to decide now. And I just don't think I couldn't do that. And it's only with time that things have become kind of clearer, and allowing myself almost to follow my instincts rather than overthinking it. So I had to kind of do it. Okay, this job isn't right for me. I actually can't do it anyway. I'm going to step back from that. And then not knowing what the next thing would be. And that for me was quite hard because I'm used to know it. It's just my personality is I kind of like to know what I'm doing. So it was a real change for me to kind of go, okay, I'm going to step away from this. But actually, I don't know what the next year looks like. I guess one thing is I've got better at saying yes to things that I instinctively am interested in doing. So rather than stopping and thinking, oh, how does that fit in? I guess with having a bit more space from not doing such an all-encompassing job now, I've been able to go, okay, yeah, that does sound interesting. I'll do that, or I'll follow that. And it's only through doing that over time, I think, that things have changed. Having a timetable in your head and wanting to change things really quickly just didn't work for me, for sure. So yeah, I can really relate to it's a long game. That's what it feels like.
So Naz, can we make post-traumatic growth happen?
Definitely. We can make post-traumatic growth happen, and it can mean different things to different people, depending on where their baseline is. But going with what you said earlier, the not to pressurize, so in an adaptive way, making it happen so that it's individualized and personalized based on where you are within that understanding, within that trajectory. So and lots of factors come into play. Your past comes into play, your experiences of maybe multiple traumatic episodes, maybe you've had of other diseases or other life-challenging events. The one thing I want to say is that we hear a lot about, the positivity effect, and we call it the toxic positivity effect, because it can be overwhelming. It can be very, very effortful and draining for many to keep, the positive. There's no formula and there's no time for growth. In fact, growth isn't event related. It's a continuous process, and it can have ups and downs, So, for example, you may at some point regret the fact that you changed your job. So it's a push and pull. We have the resilience to grow. We're born resilient. And whilst cancer takes away quite a bit of that resilience. We can reinfuse control to grow in the ways we want to. We can be a work in progress, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. There's no end goal. That's what I'm going to achieve, and I'm going to make sure I achieve it. And that's what everyone else expects me to achieve. But actually, just enjoy the journey. You may never get there, but, you're on the right path.
So what can people do to nudge it along to try and make it happen?
So I'd like to say denial of the traumatic related experiences is not the way to go. Regretting or ruminating about your life, or I should have done this, that's why I'm ill, or no, that's not going to help. Denial, regret, those kinds of ruminative behaviours are not going to help. Acknowledgement that, it's pretty horrible what has happened, and there may be, there's uncertainty, there are challenges, but there are things I can do within my scope where I am that can make me feel better and, have more confidence in myself in terms of being happy with the changes I want to make. So again, I'm going back to cognitive function because the work that we have just published shows that cognitive flexibility and insight, reflection, these mechanisms help you grow in positive ways, help you make those changes in positive ways. So how can we improve flexibility? How can we improve cognitive flexibility? Anything that improves plasticity in the brain will help you achieve cognitive flexibility. There are exercises that we can engage in that can help us achieve cognitive flexibility. Exercises that improve attention focus, concentration, mindfulness-related activities, relaxation, meditation exercises, as well as challenging your brain in interesting ways, keeping it active, keeping it refreshing. So imagine you're working on your laptop and you've never restarted. It needs refreshing. It needs to kind of get rid of that cache, all the stuff that you accumulate. Try new things, that would surprise you, that make you feel like, gosh, I was able to do that. And my brain isn't kind of completely gone. And positive reinforcement. And taking one step at a time, not overwhelming yourself with grand plans, because smaller steps, smaller activities can provide you with bigger impact. Taking on a course that you always thought you wanted to do, or in getting involved in different kind of arts related activities, crochet, paint, anything that you think, wow, that would be a challenge, and I think I can, at this time, attempt it. I'm going to go for it. It will refresh, And then that experience will give you confidence to try out bigger things, to try out social support where you speak with others within your network who have had similar experiences, validation, and then action, making it, making these new things you want to do happen.
As you're talking through it, I can really relate everything you're saying to the examples that Gill gave. That you reflected, but also then you started looking at, actually, I'm really interested in doing that thing and I'm going to give it a go without trying to solve the whole puzzle. It really felt like it was one piece at a time.
Yeah, definitely. And the social thing, sort of connection thing as well, has been really important, I think, that's where Life After Cancer has been brilliant. I've got a group now, there's a group of 4 of us, so 3 other people who I count as incredibly good friends who've also been through the experience, and we spend time going out walking together. We don't spend the time talking about cancer, but actually I think it's just something that comes from the connection with people who've been through that kind of traumatic experience as well. So that's been brilliant. But then I guess on the flip side of it, another thing that I've gone back to rowing again, which is something I used to do when I was at university, and I'm lucky enough that I'm physically well enough to have that as an opportunity. But I got in a real rut about wanting to be able to. I used to run a lot, and it's something I just cannot do. I'm not allowed to impact stuff. So I was like, and exercise has always been really important. I wasn't doing it immediately before I had the cancer diagnosis, so it's a new thing. It's a real team sport, so it's a real connection there. But those people only know me, this version of me. So there's no comparison there. You don't have to tell them what the history is. I mean, they do know just because it's kind of come out in discussion, but not because I can't do the activity. I'm kind of an equal as far as they're concerned. And that's been really, I'm trying to think what the right word is, validating.
Yeah.
I think like my confidence that it's kind of actually I'm holding my own with these people despite what's happened. And the connection that's come with the team sport as well has been amazing.
This is a question to both of you. If someone's listening and they're thinking, oh my goodness, I can't relate to any of this, nothing has changed, what would you want to say to them?
Some of the changes we may not be aware of. So changes can happen, but they are very subtle. And So as we discussed earlier, there's a kind of no formula to say, well, that I'm going to put the parameters in and I'm going to get an answer for. No. There have been changes, definitely, because the brain naturally responds to trauma in negative and positive ways. There have been changes, have hope. And if you tend to feel the negative more than the positive changes, don't fret. There is hope to actively engage in the small steps, reflect, think back. There is always something we can do to provide that change, to make that change. It can be scary for many. It requires courage, and sometimes our past vulnerability is a barrier. Change is always possible, always. So be hopeful.
And what one thing would make the biggest difference to that person right now?
The realization.
Yeah.
The realization that the change can happen and it can be helpful, and it will come with a bit of support, with a bit of help. With a bit of guidance, and to know that if it doesn't come immediately upon trying something new, we can work towards it, and trusting your body, trusting your brain, because after cancer, many of us can lose trust in our body, and we find it difficult to identify with our bodies. The new me, the new normal, the new change, the new worse, better, work in progress. So trust that brain of yours. It can do amazing things. In fact, it is doing whilst you're listening to this. It will come.
Gill, how about yourself? What really helped you during that period, if you're thinking about the changes that you did make? Because I think once we've implemented them, like you said, Naz, we can forget, actually, without stopping and looking back, what we have achieved.
Yeah, I totally agree. I guess my first thing I'd say is there is no timetable. That's one thing that I really learned. I said earlier that actually, so I guess my advice would be take the pressure off yourself, because my experience was that when I took the pressure off myself, then I was able to think more clearly. And I think it's easy for me to kind of sitting here now, nearly 6 years down the line, and I can look back and see things have changed. But in the moment, I didn't feel I went through a long phase where I just felt like I was a mess afterwards. I wasn't achieving anything. I was having to give up things because I couldn't do them anymore. And I couldn't do the things that I wanted to do. So actually in the moment, it's just really hard. And I think you need to get to a point where you can look back and notice the small wins as well. It's not all big things that you have to do for it to be growth, I don't think. I mean, it's only kind of thinking about this and talking that you kind of go, oh, okay, yeah, I have done that. And I think it's also remembering that you mentioned about courage. It's like you've already been through an awful time and you must have shown courage to do that. So inherently you have got the courage and determination you need. Otherwise you wouldn't be where you are. But it's easy to forget that when you've lost yourself in the whole process. I think it's tiny little steps which you won't recognise until you look back and maybe you're out of the thick of trying to make hard decisions at the time. And maybe even if it's a decision that you feel like you're being forced to make because of negative things, I think you can reframe it as actually, I'm glad I had to make that decision. That's certainly been my experience anyway.
Naz, is there anything about post-traumatic growth that we haven't covered that you think is really important we mention?
As we were speaking earlier, I thought it might be useful to emphasise that to allow yourself to grow. Sometimes we are bounded by certain things. Be open to experience. Open yourself up, and any change is good. It sees the opportunity and go for it. And reframing, I think, is quite powerful. It kind of take back control, reclaim control. So be open to experience. And when you were speaking earlier, it reminded me of something that a colleague of mine who'd gone through cancer treatment had been given a warning at work for not being able to perform as well as she. And then she had a face-to-face with her manager. And she said it was at that moment when he was shouting and I was kind of trying to make my point and also raising my voice, it just occurred to me to say, you know what? I've actually been to hell and back. And I'm here standing and supporting myself, working to the best of my ability. You can give me as many warnings as you want, but it's about that realisation. I'm not that vulnerable. I am very strong, I'm actually confronting this issue. And I've engaged with this challenge and I'm defending myself. But in the past, I may not have done that.
Mm-hmm.
I may have actually surrendered to it and taken the blame and felt awful about myself. But I didn't do that. That realisation is growth to me. I mean, everything is fine now. Employer understanding is fine, and they have a very good relationship at the moment. But she fought for herself. She advocated for herself before she may not have.
Gill, before we come to the end, I've got a bit of a quick fire round for you, if you're happy to answer. So just thinking back to the time when you finished treatment, what did you expect life after cancer treatment to be like, and what was the reality?
I expected returning to normal, and the reality was broken and completely lost. I didn't know who I was.
What surprised you the most about life post-treatment, good or challenging?
How different I felt as a person.
What's one thing you wish someone had told you about life post-treatment?
That you don't just get better.
What's one thing no one tells you about life after cancer?
When the treatment ends, there's still a huge amount of work to do.
What helped you the most after cancer treatment?
Connection with people who similar experience.
And what is it really like once you finish cancer treatment?
It's a hard place to be. It's lonely, quite dark, I think.
What's something someone said to you post-treatment that was quite unhelpful?
So when will you be back up to full time then?
Or what could they have said instead?
How are you finding being back at work? Is there anything we can do to support you?
What's one small thing that you would tell someone who's just finished cancer treatment right now? What could they do to support themselves?
Give themselves space and time.
And if you could send a message to your post-treatment self, what would you say?
Be kinder to yourself, and things will get easier.
And what do you wish doctors or healthcare teams knew about the reality of life post-treatment?
A better understanding of long-term effects, late effects from the treatment and the impact that has on life. So the need for, I guess it's the non-medical support, the psychological side, the support there.
Thank you. Thank you so much, both. I really appreciate your
you.
time. That is time. It went really quickly, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. Yeah.
Thank you. Today we've talked about post-traumatic growth and what that term means in the context of cancer. For some people, it offers language for changes they recognise in themselves, and for others, it may not resonate at all, and that's completely valid. Growth is not expected, and it does not replace the difficulty of what happened. If it feels helpful, I'll leave you with one gentle question to reflect on. In what ways, if any, do you approach parts of life differently now? Thank you for listening. If you'd like support or community, you can find free online workshops, expert sessions, peer groups, and our 6-week programme at life-aftercancer.co.uk. If this episode was helpful, you can follow the podcast or leave a review. It helps others find these conversations. Support information is always available in the show notes. Take care, and we'll see you next time.